increasing the security at an enterprise level is something that mobile device management allows us to do very easily through a nice web interface. And ultimately that means minimizing our loss of data and to the organization. We're able to prove compliancy with industry standards to make sure that sensitive data that's not only relevant to the organization but a specific industry does not get in the hands of the wrong individuals. It also allows us to manage the complexity of having multiple geographies, multiple users that need different privileges and access, as well as just the fact that there's so many devices out there. We always talk about the big three being Android, BlackBerry, and iOS devices, but there's other, Windows Mobile as well that we have to be able to manage, and mobile device management allows us to do that very easily. So with that, at this point, what I'd like to do is just kind of walk you through some key features through the PowerPoint, then we'll actually see a live product demonstration. So inventory management, having control of your devices from one central location, being able to see all those devices, see their compliancy. These are all things, and again, based upon the most recent check-in of that device, we're able to see very detailed information regarding those endpoints. An end-user self-service portal that can be accessible through a PC, but it also is accessible through the mobile device itself, assuming that the customer would like to do that. So again, a self-service portal allowing the customer some capabilities themselves. Application management. We might find that, especially if it's a corporately provided device, there may be some applications that we see as inappropriate, and we might want to restrict access to those applications. There may be certain applications that we want to force the users to have on their devices so that they can easily update different systems and so forth. So we have the capability of not only installing applications in an automated fashion, but providing a blacklist as well as a white list of applications that we allow or deny within the organization. Also, security and policy management, allowing you to determine who has what access to certain features on those devices. For example, you might want to limit access to Siri or to a camera, and so the policy management allows us to determine that. Device location. Now, a lot of people might see this as, well, you're keeping tabs on where I'm at. Well, yes, you can do that, but if you're like me, you probably have misplaced your phone, one or two times, and so this is a great tool for utilizing device location to help in that type of situation. Also, reporting capabilities. There is quite a number of reports that are provided out of the box with MDM, so you've got quite a bit of reporting capabilities that you have access to and see information that's relevant to the organization. And again, the secure content locker, we talked about this earlier, giving the example of United Airlines, where they created a secure content locker for their pilots on their iPads, and this goes for sales organizations with marketing material, competitive information, things of that nature. And not only does it secure it while it's on the device, but again, if the device ever gets in the wrong hands, we can very easily recall that information. So with that, let's move into the product demonstration. And actually, it's going to take me just a second to set this up. So if there's any questions, I'll be glad to take those at this time while I'm getting everything in line. So if there's any questions, feel free.
Hey, Ron.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if you can answer questions and get it set up at the same time, but one thing I wanted to ask about, I have a friend who works at IBM, and he's told me, I don't know what they use for MDM, and I'm sure he doesn't know that either, but he said that, one thing we can't do, anybody that has an iPhone, IBM has disabled Siri. So I would assume that MDM can do that if you happen to have an iPhone. But I guess the more interesting question would be why, and I would suspect it's not because Siri answers or gives you a bad joke. If you ask her a question, it's probably some other reason that they've decided to disable Siri.
Yes. So the answer to both your questions is one, we do have the ability to disable Siri on your iOS devices. And the probably more interesting answer to your question is the reason why IBM felt that it was a security vulnerability is that when you actually ask Siri a question, it will send that information to Apple, and then at that point it will come back and return the text. So they felt that if the questions, obviously IBM couldn't control the questions that employees might ask. And so with that, they felt that might be a vulnerability to some of their projects and to some of their customers' information. So, but yes, we are seeing that more and more organizations wanting to disable certain capabilities, and mobile device management certainly could go to that level. Okay, good question. So with that, and certainly if you've got more questions, you can send those in on the chat and the question Q&A portion of the webinar, and we'll take those towards the end of the presentation. So as we look here, I'm in a web console, so this is the mobile device management console, and immediately when I log in, I have access to the dashboard that gives me some quite interesting data in terms of device ownership. And I think this is probably fairly, although I only have 3 devices here, grant you that, but I think that this is probably some fairly accurate numbers in terms of what represents corporately provided devices versus bring your own devices. And I think well over 50% you'll find of the devices that you might end up managing will be bring your own device, unless of course you work for one of those companies that'll give you an iPad like Olympus. They do that. So with that, you can see some interesting information. You immediately have access to the devices and seeing information regarding those devices. Now, beyond just some of the compliancy information and statistics that we have here, some of the enrollment statistics that we can capture at the dashboard level. What's involved in actually rolling mobile device management out? Well, first thing we want to do is to identify the different locations and groups of users that we have. So here on the left-hand side, you can see we've got an organization, RightStar Systems, right? And then I've actually divided this up into 2 regions. We have a western region and an eastern region. And with that, each of these regions have their own offices. And so at this point, we have the ability to see this hierarchical structure in managing those endpoints. So defining your locations and groups is going to be one of the first things that you do. After doing that, we then want to identify our users. Now, users can certainly be manually created, but there's obviously no fun in that. We'd also have the ability to interface with Active Directory to bring in users through an LDAP data source, for example, or we'd have the ability to import from a CSV file format. So I've already created some users, so here you can see I've got a user account for myself. At this point, I can check, any of the information. This is going to contain email information, so we know how to contact this user. We're, defining just some basic information. Again, this might come from Active Directory or importing from another user. Also, here we can define what their role is. Now, this particular user, I want to give them full access, but we can certainly limit that as needed. Now, at that point, we're going to go ahead and now add a device for this user. So this user did not have a device. So at this point, we've got our Hills device. We can certainly name this anything that we want. We can select which group that it's associated with. So in this case, let's say it's in the RightStar West region, who has ownership. And this is going to be important because based upon the ownership of the device, whether it be a corporate dedicated, corporate shared, meaning that the employee can use it for both personal and corporate use, employee-owned or undefined, undefined, we can have the appropriate policies based upon this type of ownership. Certainly, it's pretty hard to clamp down too hard on a device that an employee might bring into the organization themselves. So, again, tighter policies if it's a corporate dedicated, for example. And then ultimately, how do we want to communicate with this user that they are now able to access the the mobile device management solution, therefore granting them access to your corporate networks and corporate email systems and so forth. Now, as you know, you don't have to use MDM to grant access to the network or to email, right? Those are just settings. But it certainly makes life a lot easier if you have control of that. And certainly if someone leaves the organization, things of that nature, you can disable that very easily and quickly. So at this point, we can send out these types of invitations, if you will, through email or through a text message. Now, I've actually already done this, and so at this point, I'm going to, you should be, and let's shut this down here. So I'm going to log back in so you can see this is a totally unsecure device. I just swipe. I'm now into the phone, and at this point, I've received an email. I actually seen a few. Now, I've already got the email queued up, and you'll notice, and this is an example of the notification that will go out to the user. So from here, we're asking them to activate their device, so we're just going to simply click on that hyperlink. That takes us to a web page where now we'll need to provide some general information. Now, at this point, I need to provide the group ID, and frankly, the three pieces of data that I'm going to provide now were previously provided to me in another email. So we have two emails that will go out. One, when the account is created, giving them their group ID that they're associated with, giving them their user ID and password information. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and provide the group ID. Next. And now our user ID, which in this case is R Hill. The password, very simple. Now you certainly can require a much stronger password if you wish. So you have the ability to devise that. And if I could spell R Hill correctly, that might have worked. But let's try this once again. So, all right. So that all works correctly, which it did. We're now beginning to enroll. So we can see that there's an enrollment. It has been verified, so we do verify the profiles with a security certificate. So this is the profile that will be installed on the phone. Now, as this is actually installing, I'm going to show you how you configure and the options that you have in defining your profile. So we're going to go ahead and install this profile. So that's going to take just a minute more. And here you can see our warning. So in terms of end-user ULERs or end-user license agreements, things of that nature, you have complete control of the messaging that goes out as it relates to end-user licenses, warning you're going to be using a corporate resource, any and all types of information, so forth and so on. All the legal jargon that you would expect in a traditional